My name is Liz Radiance from Nigeria, and today I'm speaking with Guy Lane from Australia about the future of life on Earth. Guy Lane is an environmental scientist and the founder of Vita Sapien organization. Vita Worldview helps people to connect with the belief, knowledge, and practice that provides the best opportunity for human civilization to survive the 21st century and thrive thereafter. Today, 8 billion humans on Earth are staring down the barrel of a global catastrophe caused by the climate and ecological crisis, a crisis for which the political and the business elites have no answer. The answer to this crisis has to come from us. And Guy Lane from Vita Sapien has a grand plan to make things better. Welcome, Guy.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
All right. So I've been reading through your material and a number of questions come to mind. I hope you can be of help with answering these questions.
Sure. Let's go.
Okay. So number one, Guy, Vita Sapien is a response to the Anthropocene crisis. What is this?
So the Anthropocene crisis is the term that we use to describe primarily the climate change issue and the destruction of ecosystems around the world. So the term Anthropocene is a term from geologists that describe the last 70 or so years in which humans are the main drivers of change on the planet. So really the crisis that we're referring to is the modern crisis that is caused by the growing power of humans on the planet. It's primarily around climate change, how we've put so much greenhouse gas in the atmosphere that we've shifted the climate system. It's also focused heavily on the damage to ecosystems and forests because they form the life support system of Earth. But also the Anthropocene crisis brings in a whole bunch of other global concerns, such as the microplastic, the plastic contamination issues around nuclear weapons, and so forth. So it basically really just describes the crisis of humanity, but focused on the last 70 years or so.
Interesting. Interesting. I don't think anyone has explained this to me as good as you have just done. Thank you for that, Guy. So, what does fostering rapid mass ecophany mean?
Yeah, so the basic premise of Vita Sapien is that at the heart of the climate and ecological crisis, at the heart of the Anthropocene crisis, is that people have become spiritually disconnected from nature. So if you sort of read up on the evolution of humans over the last 300,000 years, so Homo sapiens evolved around 300,000 years ago, for 98% of the time that humans have been humans, our spiritual expression was reflected in the landscape around us. You know, for most of the time of humans, we were hunter-gatherer people effectively, and we were spiritually connected to the game that we were chasing, spiritually connected to the clouds and the rain and the river and the landscapes and the wildlife. And then around 2,500 years ago, a whole bunch of ideas came up. We refer to this as the axial age, which created this separation between people's spiritual connection to nature, and instead we became spiritually connected to ideas like God, for example. Most of the world's
Mm,
religions and major philosophies that are dominant today actually have their roots in this period 2,500 years ago. And so the spiritual disconnection from nature, we believe to be the heart of the reason why people have effectively destroyed the ecosystem that is our life support system. So the response to that, or the solution to that, is to foster in people to have an ecological epiphany, which is a spiritual awakening to nature. An ecological epiphany is what we refer to as an ecophany. So the idea is that if we can
mm,
foster people to have an ecological awakening to nature, a spiritual awakening to nature, that will foster in them the concern, the moral concern for nature that will motivate them to take the actions necessary to fix the problem so that we don't have to go into the hell that is coming towards us. So, in order to do
Mm.
that on scale and to do that in time, this is the concept of rapid mass ecophany. So, mass ecophany is the idea of fostering an ecological epiphany in millions of people. And rapid mass ecophany is the idea of doing that, but doing it really quickly. And so, part of the work of Vita Sapien has been to think through that idea and to develop the tools and to develop the programs to actually help to foster ecophany and then look for the resources to then do that on a mass scale.
Mm. Amazing, amazing point of view. And there's been this question I've been dying to ask, and I really cannot wait for you to, make me understand this better. I mean, this is not just about me. Thousands of people who would be listening to this recording. I am very excited about them hearing your perspective about this. Now, this is the question, guys. What is the Vita worldview end time myth? I'll take that again. What is the Vita worldview end time myth?
Yeah. So an end time myth. So back to the axial age where most of the world's religions were founded. Okay. So and just focusing on the three big ones. Okay. So Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism account
Okay.
for around 5.6 billion people on the planet. That's about 70% of the world population ascribes to those spiritual views. Okay. So if you
Hmm.
just focus on the Bible, for example, or the Christian mythology, because I understand that having grown up in a Christian country, um, uh,
Amazing.
there is this idea written into the Christian holy books that when Jesus comes back, the world is going to burn. This is the Battle of Armageddon, right? And so the
Oh, I
actual
see.
holy
Okay.
books, not only Christian, but also the Islamic holy books, and also, but in a slightly different framing, the Hindu mythology basically has the world going into a wall of flame and the eradication of most of what we know and love as basically the future as told by those stories. And this is called end time myths. The point about
Mhm.
end time myths is that because they form a part of the worldview of the follower, right? It influences not only their thinking, it influences their behavior. I'll give you an example. In 2011, I was in London with a business partner, and we were staying with her brother, who was a born again Christian guy. And we were having well, I was having a beer. I don't know. I think he might have had an orange juice in the pub.
Okay.
All right. And I was telling him about the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, about how this massive plume of oil spill was damaging the habitat of the sperm whales because there was sperm whale population. He says to me, he says, "Don't worry about it." And I'm like, well, I am worried about it. Why should I not worry about it? He says, because it's all going to burn anyway. All right. So that
Okay.
was that was tough for me because I was staying in his
Hmm.
house, right, with my
Hmm.
business partner. So, but the point was that his worldview has it that the planet is going to burn. So why worry about trying to tackle climate change? Why worry about trying to protect forests? Why worry about caring
Mm.
about the planet if it's all going to burn anyway? Because God says so, and I know that because I read it in the Holy Book. And this comes back to the very heart of the Vita Sapien argument is that the way that we see the world, the way that we perceive the world, the beliefs that we hold, whether they are spiritual or otherwise, manifest into the real world through our actions and inactions. And Vita worldview is
Okay.
really just trying to create a worldview, an alternative worldview, grounded in
Hmm.
science, grounded in ecological spirituality that gives the humans the best chance of surviving the 21st century. That's what the work's about. Vita Sapien is the organization that is advancing Vita worldview.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
Vita worldview has an end time myth, okay? Because
Okay.
all good worldviews have got to explain where things began and where things end, okay? So, if we listen to the field of cosmology, that's the study of stars and planets and things.
Hmm.
And they will tell us that our planet is in orbit around the sun in the habitable zone, which means that our planet is not too close to the sun that it's too hot for life, and it's not too
Mm,
far away that it's frozen over and that nothing can live, that we're in this kind of sweet spot, the Goldilocks zone or the habitable zone. But what will happen in about 1 billion to 1.5 billion years, as the sun gets older and consumes its fuel, it will eventually start to swell up. And that's called a red giant. And eventually, sometime in the coming billions of years, to not hundreds of billions, just in the next 1, 2, 3 billion years, the sun will expand so much that it will basically burn off all of the life on Earth. Okay. That's what the scientists say.
wow.
Pretty established. Main sequence
Okay.
stars
Mm-hmm.
and red giants. Okay. So so
Mm-hmm.
what I'm thinking is that if we can protect the environment and look after the environment, we've potentially got hundreds of millions of years ahead of us to live on
Okay.
this planet if we don't destroy it first. So what we've done is we've
Mm-hmm.
factored in this concept called a galactic year. A galactic year is basically 230 million Earth years, and that's the time that it takes for our solar system to do a rotation around the galactic core. So Vita Sapiens' aspiration is that human beings are living and thriving on planet Earth 230
Mm-hmm.
billion years from now. And beyond that time, we're at great risk from the red giant basically taking out us as the early tranches of life on Earth. And so our end time mythology basically sees us having a very fruitful 230 million years ahead of us, but we've got to get our affairs in order to fix the Anthropocene crisis, which means tackling climate change, which means transitioning away from fossil fuels, which means moving away from petroleum-based plastics and cleaning up the mess that we've left and replanning half of the planet because we've degraded so much of the global ecosystem. That is our life support system.
I see. I see. You were quite good with the numbers. I mean, very accurate mentioning of the numbers and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing.
This
Amazing. For a person
this is
like
not
me
my first
who,
rodeo.
oh, really? I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, so Guy, I'm very curious now to know how all of this came about. How did the idea of Vita Sapien come from? How did it come from? How
Yeah.
did it come about?
So when I was 17 years old,
Hmm.
I actually got enrolled into this born again Christian group for about 10 months, and I ran with those guys. And this was
Okay.
what's called a Pentecostal church. So these are the guys that were saying it's all going to burn anyway. Their worldview that they shared with me was that Jesus was coming back, and that when he came back, it was going to all of the good Christians were going to go up to heaven with Jesus. They would get to go
Mm,
to heaven without dying, and that everybody
mm,
else was going to stay behind and have to suffer Armageddon war and the trials and the
mm.
tribulations and the burning of the forests and basically the annihilation of life on Earth, right? And
Yeah.
that was the story that they told me. That was the story that those people believe. And these were the people that say, don't worry, it's going to burn anyway, right? So I left that because I didn't like that story. I didn't think it made any sense. It wasn't intellectual. They didn't, you know, that wasn't that didn't make any sense it didn't make any sense. And
Mm,
so but that had always stuck in my mind because I knew that a lot of people actually believe that, whether they be the Christian version or the Muslim version or the Hindu version. There's lots of people that hold those views. And then years ago, I came to this idea basically that the reason that we had a climate and ecological crisis was because of these beliefs. That the root of the crisis was belief. So I wrote an article on this and I posted it onto LinkedIn, and basically saying that, all of these unsustainable religions, we need a sustainable religion. That was the original conception. So I looked up how to create a religion in Australia, checked out the Charity Commission, got the paperwork, and I said, well, that's pretty straightforward. So I just wrote this little article that says, this is why we need a sustainable religion, and this is what it would look like, and this is how to apply for it. And I put that on LinkedIn, which is the social media for business. And then I went on
mhm,
and did something else because I had other things to do. 3 days later, I was contacted by this guy who asked me to come and talk about my sustainable religion. in Kuala Lumpur,
Mm.
talking to before.
I see. I see.
All right.
Amazing.
And so I'm like,
Amazing.
wow, that
Okay.
came out of the blue. I just wrote this thing and
Mm.
flipped it off. I was writing these blogs left, right, and center. And uh
Interesting.
and so I had 2 months to prepare my notes. So I thought, well, let's investigate this idea some more. Let's start filling in the blanks. And so I worked on it for 2 months, and then when I came back, I continued to work on it. What I came to realize very early on was that the answer wasn't religion, right? Because people who are religious already have a religion, and people that aren't religious aren't looking for a religion in the first place. So it wasn't the right
Mm.
framing. And so that's why I've moved away from the religion idea and moved on to more of a broader concept of worldview. And a worldview is basically a term that encompasses one's religion, one's spiritual views, one's knowledge, one's personal experience, and so forth. So, worldview is this idea that encompasses all of these different lenses through which we see the world. And that's the work that I've been working on over the last 8 years is to basically flesh out what that worldview would look like that gives us the best chance of surviving the 21st century. Because right now
Okay.
it's not looking good.
I see. I see. If there's anything that stands out inside of all of your explaining is the passion. I can feel the fire. I can feel, the energy from, coming from someone who really knows what he is doing.
Yeah.
Guy, I'm curious to know now, are there any benefits of being involved with Vita Sapien?
Yeah, so I mean, Vita Sapien is an organization that
Okay,
seeks members and followers and so forth, right? So,
I see.
so
So it's just like a religion. We have Christianity, Islam. So Vita Sapien is it safe to call it a religion?
there is a part of this work. So let me explain this,
Hmm.
right? In
Okay.
the definition of religion of the Australian
Hmm.
Charity Commission, a religion is a
Okay.
belief in a supernatural being, principle, or thing. The belief in a
Okay.
supernatural and the acceptance of canons of conduct that give effect to the belief. So, put another way,
I see.
believing in something that you can't prove is there and the
Mm,
actions that you would take if you believed that, right? So, the belief in
I see.
God is very much a religion. Okay. So, when I was putting in the
Okay.
paperwork to actually apply
Hmm.
for Vita Sapien as a religion, the supernatural is what we refer to as Vitae-planeta. So Vitae-planeta
Okay.
is the idea that all the living things on Earth, including the ocean, the atmosphere, and the soil, basically form the body of a single organism, right? That
Mm,
that that
interesting. Okay.
that frames that you and I are cells in the greater body, and that ultimately you and I have a natural responsibility to the well-being of the host. All right.
Okay.
It's a
Hmm.
spiritual view. It's not a scientific fact that the idea of Vitae-planeta. That said, because the work that I've been doing has been trying to synthesize environmental science with ecological spirituality, that view, the spiritual view of Vitae-planeta, the living planet as a single organism, is very close, in fact, to a scientific theory called Gaia theory. And Gaia theory says that the living organisms on the planet act in a manner as to maintain the condition of the atmosphere to keep the temperatures suitable to the well-being of life. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so Vitae-planeta is really a spiritual version of Gaia theory. All right. So that's the
I see.
supernatural part of it. And then we have what we refer to as the quests. So the quests are kind of like canons of conduct. So certain
Mm.
behavioral patterns. If
So
you
you have
believe,
12 of them,
and there's
just
12
like
of them, yeah.
commandments, 12 of them. I see. Okay.
Okay, so there's 12 of those, and the idea is that if you believed in Vitae-planeta, then these are the things that you might do. And so, for example, you would give recognition to the existence of Vitae-planeta, that you would
Okay.
have a personal mission to support the well-being of Vitae-planeta, that you would
That's
seek a
key.
deeper
Hmm.
understanding of how the Earth system functions. And so, so
Wonderful. Okay.
when you take Vitae-planeta and the quests and you put them together, then you have Vita religion. Okay.
I see.
But
I
but
see.
Vita worldview is much broader than just those two things. It's got all these other things in it. Okay. So,
Mm.
what was the question again?
Oh, I asked about the benefits. Like,
The
what do I
benefits. Yeah.
benefit from,
Okay.
being in Vita Sapien?
So being involved in Vita-planeta, in Vita Sapien, all right,
Hmm.
would be involves understanding the literature, understanding these ideas, and getting your head around it. The advantage for people to be involved is that it will give them a deeper understanding of what is happening on the world today and what is coming to us, because the
Mm.
scientists have got a very clear understanding of climate change. We've got a very clear
Okay.
understanding of how the ecosystem functions. So being involved
Mm.
with Vita Sapien is basically a fast track to getting your head around how to protect yourself from what's coming in the future, but also how to make a positive contribution to make things better so that we don't have to go through the worst of what is potentially going to come.
I see. Amazing, amazing. So, is there a particular way or something specific someone has to do if they want to join or be involved with Vita Sapien?
So
How do I?
the first
Mhm,
thing really is to read the pocketbook. So on the website, you can see the link to the pocketbook. It's called Vita Worldview. I update that every 3 months or so. So if you actually go one of the pages on the website, you can see all the past versions and the progression of
okay.
the idea. And it's a short booklet. It takes about an hour and a half to read. It's in English at the moment. I don't have the resources to translate, but ultimately I'd like it in many other
Mm,
languages. And it's
okay.
basically just trying to encapsulate this big story that I've been telling in about an hour and a half of reading. And there's a section in there that sort of looks at spirituality. There's a section in there that looks at some core principles of environmental science. And so
Mhm.
the first stepping stones for people that want to be involved in this would be to grab the pocketbook from the
The
website. It's a
pocketbook.
PDF for
Okay.
free. And if you like
Mm,
what it says, then you can buy some copies and then hand them out and then start to create what we refer to as a pod like a pod of whales, which is
okay.
basically anybody can put their hand up to become a Vita Sapien leader and develop
Hmm.
an understanding of the material and share the material around their social networks. Okay.
I see. I
Okay.
see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, you still, it looks like you're trying to say something.
Well, I was going to say a few other things. We also promote full moon parties. And so being
Okay.
involved in Vita Sapien means a social event once a month to watch the rise of the full moon. And that becomes a location where people can share stories and socialize, but also where
Mm,
new people can come along and be invited into the conversation. We also have a New Year celebration on July 16th. Okay. And
hmm.
so we've been holding that for the last 6 years. We let off a little explosive device. We can explain that in more detail if you like. So the idea is
Mm,
that there is all of these various activities associated with being involved in Vita Sapien. We also have a discipline of archery, Vitan archery. And so the idea is to sort of try and create the Vitan version of different things. And the Vitan version is a version that has like a lower carbon footprint and an environmental footprint and sustainable materials, and it becomes like a bonding exercise and a way of connecting spiritually with other people and with nature itself.
I see. Okay. Well explained. I have say about two more questions that actually bothers me. And if you can quickly shed a little light on each of them, I would really appreciate. Okay, so there's this thing about the latent Vitans I
Yeah,
had read about.
yeah,
Right. So I saw something about a number, 53 million. It
yeah,
says there's something about 53 million Latin Vitans.
yeah,
What is
yeah.
this?
So,
What is this about? Yeah.
so, so basically, the Vita worldview. A lot of people already think the like what is written in Vita worldview. I
Hmm.
estimate
Hmm.
around 53 million, about 8% of the Western public. I don't know about Africans or Chinese or Indians, so I'm focused just on Western at the moment. So around 8% of Western adults already
Okay.
think like what I've written in the book, right? There's not a
I see.
completely out of the box solution
Mm,
to the worldview. It's kind of pretty sensible and logical. So the idea,
Okay.
so these people already have characteristics of what we'd call a Vitan, which is somebody who has a deep passion and love for nature, who views the world
Mhm.
through a scientific and rational lens, and who is taking action
Mhm.
to make things better. These are the characteristics of what we refer to as a Vitan. A latent Vitan is somebody who has those characteristics, who has not yet come across Vita Sapien organization and Vita worldview. So they're
Mm.
kind of like these
Mm.
cool people that are out there, but they don't realize necessarily that there is a name for what they believe and that there is a grouping for them. That's the idea of a latent Vitan. So we think there's 53 million people in the Western world alone, not counting Nigeria, um,
Okay.
who will think that way. And the idea is that those people would eventually take an interest in following the work that we're doing through Vita Sapien.
I see. I see. You've done justice to that question. I was just wondering, I saw the number 53 million and I'm like, Latin Vitans? Okay. I
Yeah,
needed to find out more about that, but
yeah.
you have helped with my curiosity. Thank you for that, Guy. And also, I think I want to find out, okay, you talked about, I mean, your statistics based on mostly the West, and you are not sure about, Asia and Africa and probably other continents. Does that mean that Vida, what's it called now? Vida Laden, does it mean that this is majorly for Western people?
No, no, it's for all people in all cultures. The reason why I've focused
Okay.
on that framing around Western culture is that I have not yet found like the partnerships to figure out how to tell that same story to people who have, for example, a Chinese worldview. Okay, so
Okay.
the, so
Okay.
so basically the text or the ideas would be identical in every culture, but they would be
Mhm.
framed differently to accommodate different cultural worldviews.
Mm.
Okay. So
Okay.
so so
Okay.
a
Okay.
literal translation of the book into Chinese would be good, but a cultural translation would be necessary as well for it to have more penetration.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. And so what is Vita Sapiens prognosis for the future on the climate change? What's your
Well,
general
like
prognosis
Vita
about the
Sapien
future?
is a response um to the the business elites and the political elites on our
Hmm.
planet, all right, have
Okay.
got no
Hmm.
answer for this problem. And if you actually look at the progression since we've understood, just going to make an adjustment here. If you actually look at the progression of, uh, climate policy over the last 50, 60 years since we've known about the problem, practically nothing has happened. So the prognosis is that absent some sort of a global transformation that I believe needs to come from a spiritual transformation around our relationship to nature, we're basically heading into hell because we're producing around 40 billion tons a year of greenhouse gas. And every year that there is a global meeting of environment ministers at the climate COPs, the next year the total
Mm.
carbon footprint actually goes up instead of coming down. So under the business as usual, under this scenario, we're going to trigger the cascade of climate tipping points, and we're going to effectively wipe out most life on Earth because that's what happens when the planet gets too hot. It starts to overheat and get hotter still. And so that's why we need some sort of a transformation, some sort of a global movement. And if it's spiritual, then that will provide the power and impetus from individual humans to do the extraordinary things that are necessary to actually fix this mess.
Okay. Amazing. I see. I see. Okay. I've never been a person who actually believes in all of these things about climate and all of that. But I think so far you have done the best in trying to make me understand and also have a better perspective about this, and also, I mean, understand the concept wholly and totally. And I'm sure that I speak the mind of so many other people out there who may be listening to this. Guy Lane, thank you so much for, taking your time to explain all of this to me. I'm pretty much satisfied, and I think I'm going to go ahead to look more into that and also see the next steps to take after that. Okay.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Guy. All right.